Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. On today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Arman Motiwalla. He's the chairman and CEO at ADM Labs. It's a vertically integrated company that specializes in manufacturing, processing, and distribution of hemp-derived products. Learn more about them at adm-labs.com. Arman Motiwalla on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Arman?
Doing
all right?
Doing good. Yeah,
awesome. I'm great. Thank you so much for being on the show. You have a super cool story, ADM Labs. Not only is it an entrepreneurial story, but it's also in hemp/cannabis, which is always fun to talk about, especially here in Colorado, right? So for the listeners, why don't you just give us a little background about yourself first, if you don't mind. Let's spend some time, family, where you grew up, all that good stuff before we get into business.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm a product of a multicultural heritage. So, I was born in Jersey, grew up in Dubai. Ancestors are Persian.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, and my dad's from India, mom's from Pakistan, and we went to college in California and London and met in Dubai. So it's a bit of a mutt. Yeah.
Wow.
All over the place.
Wow. Your mom and dad met each other in school?
No, they were just home in Dubai. Both their parents were there. They met up, and then I came along a little after.
Any brothers or sisters?
One brother. A lot of people in my family are all lawyers. My brother went that way, so he's in New York right now.
Was your dad a lawyer?
No, so that's where I got the entrepreneurial bug from. My dad, everyone on my dad's side of the family, dad, granddad before, they were all entrepreneurs. Mom's side of the family were all bankers and lawyers. So
is that right? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm doing something that's kind of in between, I guess.
So growing up, you had that bug early on where you're like, I want to be like dad.
Well, it's interesting. My dad and my granddad instilled kind of that entrepreneurship sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was really young, my granddad had kind of like a equivalent to like Dillard's and Macy's, kind of like department stores.
Oh, okay. Okay. In Dubai.
In Dubai, yeah.
Okay. All right.
In fact, the family moved from Yemen a long time ago, and he had shopping malls and all sorts of stuff, and then Yemen had a civil war. He moved to Dubai, started the whole thing again.
What? And, lost everything and had to start over?
Unfortunately, yeah. The government was pretty keen on taking stuff at that point in time.
Wow.
But I remember kind of growing up, I would, he had this big office at the top of a building overlooking the port. And so I would, as a kid, I would go in there and sit in this big chair and, I'd see ships come in and out, and he would, he's very old school. He would, tell me kind of what values of how to do business. And, that's when you could do business on a handshake. Nowadays,
right.
Not exactly the case, right? But I got a lot of that entrepreneurship bug from him. And, my dad runs a branding multimedia design company, but he originally was a photographer,
Really?
And so, yeah, I think everyone on that side of the family, their motto was always kind of follow your dream, do what you want to do. And so
very cool.
My granddad had no idea how my dad was going to make money as a photographer, but, let him do it. And then my dad
was your granddad like, hey, come help me run the business? So your dad never went and ran the business with your grandfather?
No, that was my dad's brother, my dad's sister. They decided to kind of go down the family business route. And my dad wanted to do his own thing. And
all right.
I kind of did the same thing.
Yeah, I was just about to say, kind of like Armand, right?
Yep.
Because because I'm guessing you could go to work for your dad even right now today if you wanted to, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely, we'd probably butt heads a little bit. Again, he's very old school, but yeah, no, we just all decided to do our own thing. And my mom, she was always, because the way of her parents were, she was like, well, you have a couple of choices. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And so when I told her I wanted to be a pilot,
Right.
that didn't compute. That did not go down very well.
Was she like, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that degree? Planes are going to fly themselves anyway in the future. So what is it you're going to do exactly?
Pretty much. That was, that's kind of what she said. And I remember it was a big fight before I went to college. And,
Ooh.
she made me promise, she said, you know what, look, if you're going to go and do this flight thing, then you
This
need to
flight
make sure
thing.
you need to make sure you go and get another degree. So,
Okay.
that's what I did. I got my degree in aeronautics and I started flying at the same time. So,
Where'd the flight thing come from? How'd that happen?
just,
What'd you watch? Did you watch Top Gun and you're like hooked or what?
well, my parents always told me that traveling was the greatest education they could ever give me. So by the time I was 18, I'd filled, 3 passports with them traveling
I
the world.
I see.
And I just loved it, and so being a pilot or going to flight school was kind of a natural just kind of passion for me, I guess.
I see. Okay. All right. So you go to school, and then what happens? You graduate. Now, by the time you graduated high or college, did you have a plan at that point, or walk us into that early career?
Yeah, well, when I was in college, I had started flying and I was taking all these different classes. I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, so it's kind of everything there is aviation based.
Okay.
We don't have a football team; we have a flight team, right?
Gotcha.
And so while I was flying, I realized, I loved it, but I thought to myself, if I sold these things, I'd probably make a little more money than if I flew.
Right.
And there was a internship that was posted in the school mailroom, and it was an alumni of the university had started a small little private jet company, and he was looking for students to be interns.
Okay.
And that man, his name's Richard Zahar. He's actually one of my mentors to this day. He's started a company called Paramount Business Jets. They're one of the largest jet charter companies in the world now.
I see.
And when I kind of took that little slip down in the mailroom, I kind of, I went over there, I met him, and he was just starting out his company. It was him and his chief operating officer, IT nerd. This guy knew everything there was to know about websites and stuff.
Okay.
And it was a small, maybe 700, 800 square foot office space above a bar in Daytona Beach. So
now, now, how were you in Miami? What was the Florida connection?
So Embry-Riddle is in Daytona Beach. That's where the college was.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I left Dubai. I got into Embry-Riddle, moved over.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, so you're in South Florida. Okay, great. So you're all right. So when you're talking to this guy, are you saying, what am I going to do? Like mail stuff out or like make copies?
Yeah,
or what am I doing?
I had no idea. I was just very interested. I was like, jet company, that sounds cool. And I was obviously expecting, they have a couple jets, but it was a true startup. But honestly, it could not have been better because I learned everything that I ever could have hoped to learn about running a business from this man.
That's great.
And I was in my early 20s. We were chartering jets out for people out of the small office. Each jet charter was 20, 40, 60,000 bucks, and I was making a commission on it too. So I in your early 20s, and you're working out of this small little bar, or space above a bar,
right?
And you're thinking, wow, this is awesome.
This is great. I'm working. I'm living in South Florida. I'm working above the bar. The clients are all rich people. I'm getting to be around planes, which is what I want to do. I mean, that's pretty good.
It was awesome, but I think more so than the actual, economics of the job was, I was able to be there from the beginning and see what it was like to grow a company from absolutely nothing.
Right.
And that happened while I was going through college, which was interesting because in my last year of college, I remember taking a class on business and corporate aviation
Yeah.
which is what I'd been doing for the last, 3 years at that point. And I was actually my own guest speaker in my own class, which was, pretty cool and unique. And
Right. That's
it
good.
was through that process of, you charter a jet for someone, and the next thing they ask you is, well, hey, do you have Super Bowl tickets, or can you get me backstage at a concert? Or
Yep.
And that's what really led into the whole concierge thing, because I built a little black book of connections and started kind of helping people out with other stuff. And
Can I take a pause right there? So when
sure.
when you charted were you the pilot?
No. I was just the one setting
it
up the clients with the
Yep.
jet and the charter companies and stuff like that.
And so let me just layman's terms. So the rich person comes in that has money. They've paid a bunch of money to get this private jet. They're about to fly to, I don't know, Vegas for the week. They're there in the building, or at some point you see or talk to them on their phone, and they're like, hey, listen, by the way, can you make some phone calls in Vegas? Because I'd really like to have the penthouse and blah, blah, blah tower. And while I'm there, I want to go see a few shows. Can you just like take care of that for me? That's how, right there. That's how it started.
That's exactly how it started. It's just about, as I'm sure you probably tell everyone on your show too, right? It's about networks, relationships, connections.
Oh my God, so critical.
And I mean, like if you're, flying somebody into an airport, or you're using someone's jet and you're chartering it out for them a couple times a week, and they live in Vegas, you ask them, hey man, do you have connections to get this guy into this hotel, or can you help me out here? And it just kind of snowballs. So
how did you even know what to charge? Or were you like, yes, I can do that, and you're like, oh shit, I don't even know what do I even charge this person?
Well, in the beginning, I really had no clue. And then as you kind of get more into the industry, especially on the travel side, you start to see how, how regimented everything is. Everyone's got set commissions. The hotels pay referral fee. I mean, Vegas is its own other animal. I mean, you can make money doing anything in
Vegas. Right. Now, did you have an entity or an LLC, or they were just kind of paying you some, like, how are you getting paid?
So, when I was doing the jet thing, I was getting just paid as an independent contractor. But then over the, 3-4 years while I was in college doing, the concierge thing, is maybe in my second year that I was like, wow, this is picking up just as much as my day-to-day stuff. And that's when I had just spent 2 years learning how to set up a company and start one. Right. So I said, it's not that difficult. I'll go out, I'll register an entity and make a little website. And then, the last 2 years in college were, I'd say I probably spend half my time divided building my own concierge company and the other half doing the jet stuff, and somehow still managing to get to class,
Right.
So,
I mean, wow. Right there is the first tip for the listeners on hustle, by the way. And it's always the case, every time I interview an entrepreneur, I get so annoyed when I meet an average person on the street and they think, oh, this is easy. You just start a business, and yeah, you got lucky because you started a business. And like, no, dude, no, there's no luck. Like, no, I worked my ass off. And by the way, here's another example right now for the listeners. Arman, you're working for your mentor, right, at his place, plus you're doing your own, now you got your own business on the side, trying to get that going, and you're going to school. And don't forget, you live in South Florida, so you're also trying to drink beer and chase girls and do all the other stuff young guys do, right? Okay, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think one thing that was really interesting to me is, kind of growing up in Dubai. It's not like growing up in the States, right? Like you can't just as a kid kind of go out and get a job, right? You can't get like a part-time job when you're in your
is that right? I had no idea that's how it worked. Really interesting.
You can. It's very, it's basically you live there, you get a work permit, you work for a big company, it's so you don't really have a lot of opportunity to just kind of start a business or do anything else unless, and I mean, if you guys look at what Dubai is now, it's kind of like trying to start a business in Hong Kong or London. It's not the easiest thing in the world. And so comparatively, when I came here to the US and I got to see firsthand how simple it was for someone, like my mentor, to just start a business, I was like, wow, he's got this small little office, but this massive website presence, and he's got people from all over the world contacting him, and it costs $19.99 to set up 800 toll-free line, and you have all these different departments. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. I was like, I can't believe how, to me, it was like, people talk about the land of opportunity. It really was for me. I was like, well, I'm not going to squander this opportunity I have.
Right.
I want to help him grow his business. I want to see if I can start something myself. If it takes off, hey, maybe I give it to him and I do something with him.
Yep.
And at the same time, I was like, well, shit, I already started college. I got to finish that, And so, my mom in particular was, she's like,
hey, this concierge thing. Now, what is this concierge thing? This is getting in the
oh
way
yeah.
of school.
Yeah, she didn't understand that either. She, first she was pissed off because she was like, well, you just wasted all of our money trying to fly. And I was like, well, no, it helps me with like my job, And
Right.
the one question she always told me, she was like, I don't understand this concierge. Why won't people just Google it? They can just Google it. Why do they need you? And, it was difficult to explain, relationships don't really come from Google. People that are spending $10, $20, $50,000, someone is going to, see a Mayweather fight and drop, 30 G's on a ticket. They're not just swiping their credit card on Google. They want someone they can trust. So
now secretly your dad being the entrepreneur, like as your mom is all concerned and giving you a hard time, let me guess, your dad in the background was like, go for it. Is that right? Is that right? A little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and my mom, she encouraged me to, she just, I think it's a mom's job to be kind of protective.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So the cuts, all right. So you got them both going. Go ahead now. At some point, do you walk away from Aero Services? That was your mentor's company, right?
No, his company was Paramount Business Jets.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. At some point, go ahead.
Yeah. So you mentioned a good point. So while when I was nearing the end of my college career, I had this little concierge thing going, and I was working for the business jet company. And I realized, well, you know what? I really wanted to focus on the concierge thing. But I wasn't able to kind of go and do that full throttle yet. I still needed some kind of basic income and needed to support myself. And so as I was nearing my last year in college, I got recruited by Volvo, like you mentioned, Volvo Aero Services.
I see.
They basically offered me a full-time position in Boca. And that way I got to learn a little more about the airline side of stuff, because we bought and sold aircraft and aircraft parts. And I figured, you know what, maybe I'm going to use this on the private jet side. Maybe I'm going to use it with the concierge. I didn't really know, but my mentor was, again, he was very cool. He understood, hey, you got to go make a living. You got to, you want to learn more about corporate America, go do it. Okay. And so I became a project manager for them. And that's where I really started to learn the ins and outs of the airline industry.
And learning how to manage people and interview and all those things.
Yeah. And what was crazy to me too was, I'd spent most of my college years, like 4 years at that point in time, learning what it was like to be in a startup environment. That's all I'd ever really known, plus being around my family. And so going into Volvo, which was, and it was bought out by HIG, went through an acquisition. It was very corporate structured, and I had never filled out a form to fill out a form. You know what I
mean? Yeah. You were like, what the hell's going on here? I just want to get shit done. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it definitely was a wake-up call. And I think that's one of the experiences that kind of made me realize what I wanted to do with my life. Because when I remember sitting in these meetings where, and there's a very strict hierarchy in some of these corporate companies. And, I was told, hey, shut up, sit down, don't open your mouth. And I do remember being in a board meeting with one of the owners of the company, and it was all of the managers, heads of every department. And my manager at that point in time, he was really cool. He knew that I came from an entrepreneurial background. He kind of had that with him too. And he said, look, I'm going to bring you into this meeting. Just shut your mouth, And so I got into that meeting there, and I remember they were trying to do some deal with a very large aircraft company. Okay. And their specialty was, airlines and buying aircraft and airline parts. But they never really knew much about private jets. And this was the first deal they were considering buying private jets.
And guess what?
And
You know a little bit about private jets.
exactly. And I remember the owner of the company talking to everyone there, kind of asking their opinion, and everyone was just kind of giving him the yes treatment.
Yeah.
And I probably shouldn't have, but I spoke up and I said, "Sir, I'm sorry, but this is a horrible idea. This deal is this is a really bad idea."
Your boss is over there going, "Oh my God." Yeah.
Oh, he sunk into his chair. And I remember the owner of the company was standing up at like this big long board table. He looked at me. He's like, "Who let their kid in here?" And I was like, "Oh."
He said that?
Oh, he said it. He had no qualms in saying that whatsoever.
Wow.
And he's like, "What's your name? Why do you think that?" And it was cool that he gave me an opportunity to at least speak. And I presented why I thought it was a really bad idea, and he gave me the opportunity to write it up for him. So, that's one thing I would say too is, a lot of times I see people that are kind of in this kind of corporate structure environment, and everyone just wants to go with that group think.
I know,
but
right?
I don't think that guy ever would have known my name if I hadn't said something and made him know my name.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, no, you're totally right. You have to take advantage of moments. I call them moments, right? There are moments where you have got to act, and it is risky. And by the way, that could have went the other direction, right? You could have been fired, and who knows? But if you don't reach out and grab those moments and take advantage of them, nothing's going to happen for you. So that's a great tip for the listeners. Okay, cool. All right. So then what happens?
So I stayed with that job for maybe about 2 years or so, and
yeah,
I got to I remember, like, at that point in time, just to kind of give you an idea of what my life was. So when I moved to Boca Raton, I had no idea where the office was, and I did not know that West Palm and Boca are like an hour from each other. So I rented an apartment, sight unseen, in West Palm, and I had an hour commute to Boca, which was, I figured it out, right? But I probably go and visit if you're going to rent an apartment before, go and take a look at it, right? I was just so gung ho to get down there. But what I was doing is, I would get up at maybe 6, 7, get to work at 8. My other boss at the time, my boss's boss, he was an ex-military drill instructor. So his whole motto was, you take a leak, you drink your coffee, you do whatever you need to do. But if work starts at 9 and you're in your seat by 8:30, if you're on time, you're late. So I remember I get up at 6 or 7, drive an hour to work. I work from 8:30 to maybe about 5:36. And then from 6 to midnight, I had a small office just, away from my job. It was maybe about 200 square feet. It was me and my partner at the time in the concierge company. And
did you have like a co-founder or just or somebody that worked with you?
So he was a family friend, and
right, cool.
He was going through law school. He decided he wanted a break. Our families introduced us. I was like, hey man, like that's great. Let's do this thing together.
All right,
and
cool.
So 8:30 to 5:30 or 6, he was in the office, and then I would come in for my shift, from like 6 to midnight. And then midnight, I would get home maybe around 1, sleep for a couple hours, get up, do the whole thing again.
See, I love it, bro. I love it, bro. The hustle. It's the hustle. I'm telling you, I don't know, for the listeners, I just hope they understand, especially with the millennial generation. I know I'm always picking on millennials. I hate to do that. It's not just millennials. There's other people too, but I mean, the laziness just kills me. Like money just doesn't fall off the tree as you're walking by. No, you have to work your ass off. And by the way, if you're thinking about being a founder in a startup and you've never done it before, you have no clue how much is involved in getting that done. You're going to work 10 times harder than your regular little employee job. I can assure you. Sorry, I'm just ranting for a second.
No, absolutely. It was, it was, you're right. I mean, the hustle, but it was exciting too,
fun. You're having fun. Yep.
You're having fun. And, I think after maybe, maybe about, 3/4 of a year of kind of doing that, the day job plus the night thing, the concierge thing was really picking up. And I realized that, I just couldn't, I wasn't in love with what I was doing in my daily corporate job.
Right.
I was sitting there filling out spreadsheets for somebody else, doing some basic level analysis, but my heart just was not in it.
And you're starting to make enough. I'm sure you're doing the math all the time in your head. I'm sure you're thinking, okay, if I lose this income, how much is the can I pay the rent, and maybe I can eat ramen noodles for a few months or whatever, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, and actually what I was doing at that point in time is, I was paid, by my corporate job, and my partner was, the money the business was making was going to go to take care of him. So
Okay.
and there was just starting to be just enough where maybe the two of us could be,
Okay.
whole. But
maybe you could maybe you could put like a little cot in the back of the office, and you could just sleep there. Get rid of your apartment.
Well, I mean, and the thing that made me, it's kind of, getting yourself out of that comfort zone. Cause I had,
right.
straight out of college, I had a decent paying, manager kind of level job. I had a 401k, dollar for dollar matching, healthcare, the works. I was like, wow, this is literally what anyone stepping out of college would want, but I just wasn't happy.
Yep.
Which sounds ungrateful, right? But
no, but I totally hear you. Well, that's because the entrepreneurial bug is eating away at your gut, and then no matter what you do, it's going to be there. You're not going to be fulfilled. And so, okay, right. Cool. Go ahead. So at some point you tell these guys, I got to go. I got a business to run.
Yeah, and it was that whole risk analysis in my head, and I remember.
Yes.
It was a random Friday, right? And I'd been kind of really mulling the decision over all week, and I was like, you know what, like, I can't do this. If I'm gonna take the risk, like I'm young, this is the time to do it. I don't have a wife, I don't have kids. Like, I can take this risk.
I can do it.
And I remember it was Friday, 5 p.m., which I recommend not doing, by the way. Don't do it this way. But I had a letter and I gave it to my manager for Friday at 5 p.m. He's like, really? Like now?
You're gonna blow my weekend. You're gonna ruin my weekend. Thank you.
And so we walked down to HR, and literally the HR director, she was locking up the door, and he was like, "Hey, Arman wants to quit," and you could just see in her eyes, she was like, unlocked the door. We went back inside, and I was like, "Look, okay, I'll come back in on Monday, and finish." Transition out everything I had to. And at that point in time, I thought I was pretty good. I had a little bit of money in my 401k.
All right.
And, I saved maybe a little bit of cash.
And the business was already kind of stood up a little bit. It's not like you had to invest money in product or systems. Like you already. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, you know what? Okay. So I basically have I got maybe like 2-3 months runway to really just make sure that which is not enough, by the way. Right. But I thought, okay, 2-3 months runway. I don't have really many expenses. I can make this work.
What'd your dad say? What'd your dad say?
They were very supportive. At that point, they were like, you know what, if this is what you feel like you got it. My mom was freaking out a little bit. My dad was like, okay, if you're going to do it, like,
go for it.
You're going to do it, And I think it was Monday when I remember speaking to HR again, and they told me that since I had quit, a couple things had changed. The dollar for dollar matching that they had in my 401k was gone. So suddenly I went from like here to here. And then they had paid for my last semester in school, which I had to pay back as well. And I also quit in the middle of pay weeks, which was also stupid because I didn't really think about that. But I was just I was so focused on getting out that I didn't think, well, if I wait one more week, I'll have another paycheck. So I didn't get that paycheck either. So now I went from having like a nice little nest egg, and I was like, I have literally enough money for rent for the next month, and that's it. So I remember walking into my little 200 square foot office, and I was sitting down with my partner, and I got my face in my hands. I was like, I don't have any money. I was like, exactly. We have 30 days, and whatever we do, we need to make rent in 30 days. I was like, or I'm sleeping on your couch, right? And, going back to that whole hustle thing, that amount of pressure, while it sounds debilitating, that lit a fire under my ass like you could not believe. I mean, when you literally have nothing else that you can count on,
that's right. That is so true. And that's a little pause for the listeners too. And I can relate even with Riderflex, starting Riderflex. When all of a sudden you realize that no money is coming in unless you get your ass up and hustle personally to make the next contract happen. Until you live that, you don't really fully understand.
So
Okay. All right, cool. But you obviously got it going because it ended up being a big success, right?
yeah, no, it was
What was your biggest year there?
with the concierge business.
Revenue. Yeah. Do you mind? I don't know if you can share that. What was your
Yeah,
biggest year
I think it
revenue?
was close to like 79 million, or like somewhere
Wow.
around 78 million. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. There you are from your hands in your face to holy shit, how are we going to make rent? And in what, 10, 11 years later, you're doing 70 million in revenue. And then you ended up selling it. Go ahead and tell us
Yeah, no, sorry. So 7 or 8 million, not
seven or eight,
70.
seven
Yeah.
or eight, seven, but
No.
still.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
again, when we started, our whole idea of concierge was, helping people do their travel reservations and stuff like. I mean, it went
Okay.
from booking your dog walker or doing your restaurant reservations to us contracting with companies like BMW. So when you press that button in your car and you speak to someone that went to one of our call centers,
Ooh,
we had hotels and resorts that would hire our concierges. We would dress them up, and they would stand at the front desk of some of those famous hotels and stuff that you frequent now, but they were all using our back end, or they
I
were on
see.
our payroll, and we would white label it for commercial buildings, real estate companies, residential buildings, hotels.
I
So it
see.
really went from like your dog walking restaurant reservation type business to this big kind of commercial sort of thing.
And the difference between you and your partner, were you the one going out and getting the deals and building relations and he was back end, or how'd you guys split it up?
Well, in the beginning, we did a bit of both, and as we kind of grew, I ended up taking on multiple partners at that time, and we had
Okay.
someone whose job was, business development, someone else who was kind of responsible for legal and all the contracts, and then we all collectively kind of took a hit at sales,
Okay.
and
Okay. Okay.
once it got to the kind of commercial level, um, there was a time where I would call myself a professional genie, because that's kind of what my job was. But
Right.
as the business grew, and you can probably relate to this, you go from less of the day to day in the
Yes.
weeds, actually talking to the customer and doing stuff, to sitting there signing stuff, talking to lawyers, sitting with your CPA,
Yeah.
So it was a good mix of all of that. So.
And okay. And then so fast forward, what happens? Do you eventually sell it? Is that what happens?
Yeah, yeah. So we had a contract with a bank, an offshore bank, and we
Okay.
were doing a lot of business with them. Dealing with high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals, and it just made sense to kind of sell/merge the companies together, and that's where I ended up moving to Utah. After
Utah.
yeah,
Oh,
big
oh, oh,
change from South Florida.
uh, just a little bit. How long did you live there?
Just about 2 years. Yeah.
And now, what was that like? Because if I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I'm guessing after this merger slash sell, you stay on then as quote an employee slash I still have some equity, but now you're
Mhm.
reporting to somebody. Is that how that
Yeah.
worked?
Yep.
I bet
Yes.
that was interesting.
It was interesting. I mean, I think what was good about that was that the company that I kind of merged with, right? They had been a client of ours for a number of years.
So okay,
I had a
okay,
personal relationship with the owner
okay,
and the
oh,
CEO.
okay.
In fact, I'm now married to a sister. So
Oh, wow, it goes even deeper. Okay, all right,
yeah,
gotcha.
so
All right. She
so
was
it was
okay.
actually it was a good fit, and what was interesting about that relationship is that they basically allowed me to kind of manage the business as an independent business unit under
Okay,
their company. So
okay.
what was good is that I got the resources that I needed to kind of help take the company to the next level with their help, and that allowed us to really expand the concierge business drastically. But more importantly, we got to focus on our core demographic, which was the 1%, right? The high net worth or ultra high net
Yeah,
worth
yeah,
individuals. And so while
yeah.
we may not have been doing hundreds and hundreds of deals, right, on
You didn't have
concierge
to.
stuff,
Yeah, you
the
didn't have
deals,
to.
yeah, the deals we were doing were a lot more lucrative, and my
Yeah.
role went to more of kind of a bit of a wealth manager, right? I got to
Okay.
also understand, uh, the clients from a different perspective. Now we were talking to them about because we had this bank connection, like what did they want to do
Oh,
with their money?
I
How do
see.
we help increase spend on the concierge side, but increase retention on the bank side?
Ah, I got
And
you.
so it was a very interesting dynamic to kind of see how it all
It
worked
almost,
together.
am I hearing this right? The concierge service almost led towards a relationship with the people that then ended up being a wealth management client.
Yep.
Wow, beautiful. Ooh, wow. Okay. Was that their vision when you merged with them? Was that the vision, or it just kind of
I
ended up?
think so. Yeah, it was more about creating, an ultra exclusive lifestyle sort of club that had the banking element behind it, because that's the one thing
Okay.
that set us all apart, I think.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Now, and then eventually you say, you know what? Thank you guys. This is cool, but then what? I got the bug. The bug. It's in there. The entrepreneurial bug. It's in there. It will not go away. Tell
Right.
me, how do you leave this and decide to go into hemp and cannabis? Let's walk me through the transition. But before you do, can you tell me what the craziest story? What is the wildest thing a wealthy person has ever asked you to schedule without giving me the person's name? Obviously, I know this, but I'm sure there's a shit
Oh
ton of
yeah, I mean,
confidentiality stuff. But what's the craziest thing? Can you share at least
well,
one story?
there's definitely a book at some point, because there's just
Yeah.
so many requests. I think one of the, aside from the illegal ones that we can't mention, right?
Right, right.
I think the one request that we weren't able to fulfill
Okay.
was a client that came to us and said that they wanted, I think it was like 500 milliliters of polar bear milk.
Polar
And
bear milk.
right, but they wanted it in liquid form. And I remember we actually, believe it or not, we found in China powdered polar bear milk. I don't know how we did, but the guy said, no, that's not good enough. Apparently it has like these special properties, and you need to drink it, in liquid form.
Wow.
So we actually had someone on our staff that was willing, believe it or not, willing to go milk a polar bear. But our insurance company said, if you guys milk that polar bear, you're never going to get insurance ever again. And the couple of zoos that we called said, you guys are not milking our polar bear, nor are we milking our polar bears for you. So that was actually one of the only requests we ever had to turn down, aside from, the other illegal ones.
I bet there is a book in there. There's probably all kinds of crazy ass stuff that wealthy people ask for, right? Oh my God.
There,
By the
there are
way,
so many of those things.
I live north of Denver, so we will have to have beers at some point, and you can tell me about some of these privately.
Not a problem.
Okay. So, all right. But anyway, so you're in Utah. Talk to us about the transition into the hemp cannabis. Go ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, I had a friend of mine that I'd known for quite some number of years, and he
Good.
was in the cannabis space, and I didn't really know much about that at the time. But
Okay.
he wanted to sell one of his grows here in Colorado to a big tobacco company, and given that I was doing some M&A sort of work, I said, you know what, that sounds cool. Let me go and take a look. So I started to come down here to Colorado, sort of help him kind of put that deal together.
I see.
And in that process, that deal never uh, got fulfilled. But in the process, I started to learn about CBD and hemp. And
What
as
year
I'm,
was what year was this?
this would have been in
Six.
2017 ish.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So as I was, at that point in time, I was trying to learn more about hemp and CBD. And so again, I had my regular day-to-day job, and
Yeah.
on the weekends I would fly out to Colorado. It was very close by, right? So I would leave Friday afternoon, evening, and I'd come back either early Monday morning to go to work, or Sunday night.
You
So I had the
basically you
whole
basic you basically started doing the same thing. You had a full-time
the
job, and
same thing.
you started the same thing. Are you married at this? Are you married now, or no? Still single?
I am now, so that's not happening now. That's
I mean,
but
in 2017, were you married?
no,
Were you
no, I
married?
wasn't. No.
Okay, all right. Sorry. So
Yeah.
you start double timing it. You start investigating. Okay, cool.
Yep.
All
And
right.
so it was interesting. On the weekends, I would basically go from farm to lab and kind of learn about the space. And as I was starting to try and put this deal together on the cannabis side, I started to realize myself how unattractive the cannabis deal was, because I was learning more about hemp and CBD
Ah.
and what a upcoming sort of
Hmm.
commodity that was.
Right.
And, after kind of, at some point, it got to the point where I was, um, I was spending so much time in Colorado. I was practically living at the Hilton in downtown. And I said,
Gotcha.
you know what? Okay, obviously there's, a transition here that needs to happen. And, the business from the concierge standpoint too was also becoming, it was less of the concierge and lifestyle business and more moving towards the bank
I,
side of stuff.
I
So it
see.
was a natural sort of transition out.
Okay.
Um, and,
Are you
I
funding?
didn't,
Are you funding the trips and everything? All the Denver
yeah,
stuff you pay. That's your own money right there.
it's my
Yeah.
own
Yeah.
money at
Okay.
that
All
point in
right.
time. And
All right.
so, when I left the concierge business, I was still living in Utah. And so I basically, I didn't fully move to Colorado until maybe a couple months after, but I quit my job.
Were you dating the
Um,
sister? Were you dating the sister?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay.
It
All right.
was
All right.
right after that.
All right.
um, but I quit my job and I was working out of my house, and I had a couple people with me too that were very interested in the hemp CBD stuff. So we were,
Okay.
again, all just kind of working out of my living room at that point in time. And
Wow.
we would make trips to Colorado every couple days. And every time I came back here to Denver, I would see a big influx of orders or other stuff that was happening. I said, you know what, this is probably a sign that I should relocate over there and really kind of focus on the business. And that's what I did. Me and my team, it was maybe 3-4 of us at the time. I
Was it
gave up
an
my,
entity? Was it a company then, or
it
was it just
was,
like a
it was,
project?
it was a company at that point in time. And,
Okay.
it was, like I said, maybe 3-4 of us. I had a big, beautiful house in Utah on the top of this mountain. I gave it up, moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Denver with the 3 guys that, were
And
helping me out.
and are they on payroll, or you're just like, hey, well, I'll give you some equity if you help me get this started?
No, they were all on payroll. And, the difference I would say between what I was doing when I started up the concierge business versus the hemp and CBD one is that kind of like cannabis space, it was very lucrative. I was very fortunate, right?
But what were you
So
sell? But what were you selling? Did you have revenue early on?
we did.
How?
We were able
How?
to sell CBD wholesale to companies that were getting, that were actually manufacturing the CBD products.
All right. So right away. All right. Can I take a timeout right there?
Sure.
So early on, ADM Labs, basically, you were going to manufacturers. You were buying. You were buying finished
CBD. Yep.
product, but then you were labeling. You putting your own sticker on it and reselling it to retailers.
Yep. Yep. So we
Wow.
start out as a broker, right? And
Wow.
the margins were good enough, like I said, that I was able to take care of my small little team. We all were able to be on payroll.
Wow.
And like I
Cool.
said, we all kind of took that leap of faith because a lot of them were with me in Utah, and we all moved into this 2-bedroom apartment in downtown.
What are
And
you like putting little stickers on the little bottles in your apartment?
oh, it was all of us. We were all sitting there. We had, like the face mask, the goggles. We were,
Are you
sticking
serious?
stuff.
That's so
Oh
good.
yeah.
That is so good.
And
That's so good
it was really,
because you're buying the raw, not raw. I guess it's finished product. I don't know how you would describe it. What do
well,
you?
yeah, it's the raw CBD, which comes in like oil or powder form, and then we would sell it to manufacturers who, will put it in their finished products like the bath bombs and stuff you see on the shelf, right?
Okay.
And that's how we started, right? So we started like everyone else in the space, kind of being a bit of a broker.
I
We
see.
didn't have a big office space when we first started, so we literally would use the conference room in the building that we were renting an apartment in, right? So we would use that conference room every single day, and eventually it got to the point where the team got so big. I was like, guys, there's like 7 people in this apartment, like working during the day. I was like, we can't like, why don't we just get a little office,
Yeah, yeah. Now who are you selling? Who were some of your early clients, your early customers? Like, who were you selling? Who was the end buyer?
So they were other manufacturers. So they were basically what we turned into. So the companies that were manufacturing product or
Okay.
that were wholesaling, also people that were making all of like the creams, the moisturizers, stuff
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
They were the ones buying the product. And so as a broker, early on, we had basically, with all this time going back and forth to Colorado, we had built this big network. Again, just like the concierge space, right? We built this network of connections. So if somebody was looking for a certain type of hemp or CBD raw material, we would find it, we would procure it, inspect it, test it, put our label on it, package it, and get it out to where it needed to go. And we were basically a one-stop shop.
Okay.
And when we finally got our own little space in a warehouse and we were kind of co-packing and stuff, that's when we started branching into the manufacturing side of stuff. Because now we had warehouse space, started to get equipment, started to hire lab guys, and then we started saying, well, hey, we don't need a broker anymore. Now we'll go and we'll make it.
But those machines to make it though, those are expensive, right? Now it's a big investment, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, yeah. And we were lucky initially that we, while all of this stuff was happening, we were lucky enough to be able to actually get a little bit of seed investment. And this was,
Ooh.
so that's another thing that set us apart from, what I initially did in the concierge space, where that was, completely grassroots and we never had any investment. This one was grassroots too, but, I'd say maybe 6 months into kind of the whole venture, we were lucky enough to have some investors that believed in us. And we took them around Colorado. We showed them what we were doing, and we got a couple million for our initial seed. And that made, as you can imagine, a huge difference. Then we were able to start manufacturing. There weren't 4 guys living in one apartment, right? It was a little better. So,
and what do you and I apologize if I don't use the right verbiage here, but you buy the hemp in biomass and then you put it in, and then you make the oils and everything else, right? Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yep. That's basically.
And are you making just your own products, or are you making you're labeling other people's products too?
So ironically, we actually don't sell much of our own product on the shelf. We were always, we started out as a wholesaler, right? And that was kind of our niche. So even right now, we white label products for a lot of the other brands that you see out there on the shelf. So we white label for them, or we provide the wholesale stuff that goes into those products. So you're not going to see an ADM Labs, cream on the shelf, so to speak, but what you will see is a lot of our clients, and we'll white label those, creams or moisturizers or what have you.
And is that because you just don't want to get into you don't want to be a consumer goods company? You'd rather be a wholesaler, manufacturer, or what's the vision now? Yeah.
Well, initially that was the case, but right now the way that this whole industry is going is CPG, right? And so, we do have a couple of different brands now that we manage that, they're not ADM Labs, but they're different brands, 3 separate brands. One is a CBD honey brand as well. And so we basically manage those as our retail brands that are out there to the public. And then we have our wholesale company that still does a lot of the B2B stuff.
I see. But the wholesale company is still the bulk of your overall business
right now, but I think 2020 is going to be a year that really changes things with the regulation that's coming in the industry and everything else. I mean, a lot of people in this space really are moving towards consumer packaged goods, and I think that's kind of the future of this space.
Have you thought about have you thought about investing in your own farms or your own fields or anything like that, or actually growing hemp at all?
We did. Unfortunately, with the state of the industry right now, hemp has really been, with that big CBD boom last year, it's kind of been over-farmed. We've seen prices drop by like 80-90% on the
80, 90
materials.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's not been a great year for farmers, unfortunately. There's just been too much. I mean, the interest has been great, but I think the demand was severely overestimated on the farming side.
I see.
So you have a lot of people that threw money into large farms, a lot of first-time farmers who unfortunately didn't know how to grow hemp. And so there's a lot of biomass out there that's sitting there. But the main bottleneck that we still see is there's still not enough people that are processing it through that kind of value chain all the way to the finished goods. So we prefer to be on this side of the supply chain, closer to the finished goods, as opposed to in the beginning.
Interesting. I wondered if you were going to start driving down I-25 in Colorado and see massive hemp fields everywhere. I live up in northern Colorado. There's lots of farmers up here, especially in the little town I live in. And I would ask some of them down at the little tavern down here. I'd be like, "Hey, so are you going to start growing hemp?" And most of the farmers I talked to were careful and watching. They were like, I don't know. Let's see. They were kind of had this like, yeah, we're looking into it, but we're not gonna.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, it's I think that the space in general, as we move away from the CBD wave, right? I think you're going to start to see hemp be grown like it is in China right now for textiles, for other sort of, let's say, non-ingestible sort of goods.
And that's where the huge money is, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
where the future is. I mean, the future is not the little tincture bottles that come on.
correct,
That is a
correct.
tiny, tiny, tiny piece of the hemp business,
Yeah,
I
the
would think.
applications elsewhere are massive, and so I think while unfortunate, the correction on the hemp market is something that needed to happen. But that's also one of the reasons why I'm not on the growing side of stuff. Plus, if you can't tell, I'm not really built for manual labor. So more of a numbers guy.
I'm curious, real quick. By the way, so right now, if somebody wants to create their own brand in hemp, they can call you. You'll help them figure it out. If
Absolutely.
I wanted to make Riderflex hemp, I could call you, and you guys could take care of it.
Yeah, we could white label your own line, tinctures, topicals, ingestibles, whatever you want.
What if I'm a farmer and I got 4 truckloads of biomass I need to get rid of? Should I call you?
Well, at that point, we probably wouldn't be buying it from you, but what we could do is we could help take it to some of the other derivatives like the oils and powders, help you kind of make a return on it.
Okay, very good. Is there anything else that people should call you for, or that you want to highlight real quick for the podcast recording? And then I want to ask you a couple of more questions about cannabis. But just anything else with ADM Labs?
Just retail hemp products, white label. Happy to help you guys out with that.
Okay, and that's adm-labs.com, by the way, for all the listeners. I want to go back just for a second because I didn't get a chance to ask you this. When you called your family and you said, "Hey, I'm going to go into cannabis business," how'd that go over? how'd that go over?
Well, so there was that I had to kind of give them some of the education that I was given. I mean, at that point in time, they had also seen me kind of take, go from, the private jet business to the concierge thing to kind of moving to Utah. I mean, they knew at that point I was going to do what I wanted to do, so they didn't really try to talk me out of it, but I just did my best to explain that, that hemp, THC, or weed were not the same thing. Definitely a shock to my mom. I don't think my dad really cared, too much. The bottom line was they were like, does this make sense? Is it a safe move? And I was lucky to have some investment to back me up that time. So
right. If I called my mother who lives in Oklahoma, even to this day, if I said the word hemp or CBD, she would just assume that that's the stuff you get high on. Like they just don't know. I mean, they do, that old, my mom's in her 70s, right? And so for them, they're just like, it's all the same. It's just bad. Oh, it's all bad. Whatever. Right. Very good. And so how many employees at ADM Labs?
So I think right now we're probably closer to, I think at our height, we were like 20 or so. And I think we're under that right now.
Okay.
So we moved a little bit from the wholesale manufacturing side to more of the retail stuff, as I mentioned. So we've actually needed to downsize because we're not running a lot of big machinery, as much. So is it
doing? Well, I don't know how much you want to share. Is it doing more revenue now than you had going over at Concierge, or is it bigger?
Yeah. So that was actually one of the beautiful things, in our first, our first 9 or 10 months, we did more revenue there than we ever had done. So we did, I think, 16 plus million in our first 9 months, which
what? Whoa.
Yeah, that was a shock. So, thankfully, touch wood, we've done, 26 plus million in revenue. We were, I think, lucky enough that we jumped on the wave right at the right time, so to speak. The space has gotten extremely competitive since then. Things have contracted quite a bit, but from the industry standpoint, but hemp and CBD is not going anywhere. So
no, I agree.
I'm excited about what the future brings.
And I think internationally, even in different countries, I mean, there's no telling what's going to happen. I know we're almost out of time. I'll ask you. By the way, one more question. But are you going to try to sell it, or you don't really? It's just, hey, I'm just kind of doing this thing, and we'll see what happens. Or
I think an exit at some point makes sense, but we're going to try and keep this thing going and see where it takes us.
When it exits, you're probably going to buy one of those big giant places on the beach down in South Florida and go back. And...
We wish.
Last question. I know we're out of time. And by the way, great story. I love the hustle, by the way, and I really hope that the listeners have picked up on this. It just does not happen by accident. First of all, you took major risks. You were not afraid to jump into new things. You learned, you studied, you listened, you made connections, you built relationships, and you hustled your ass off. And basically, you've built 2 companies, and you're not even 40 years old yet. I mean, right? I don't know how old you are, but
well, I still miss the 30 under 30, but there is always the 40
under 30. You've done very well, my friend. Congratulations on both businesses, really. I mean, kudos. Last question. I know we're out of time. If you had to put because you're married now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kids?
1 kid. Yeah.
All right. So now you're dad. If I asked you to put your core purpose in life into a sentence, but I didn't let you tie it to the wife or your child. So let's go beyond that, because that's usually the automatic answer. So if you couldn't tie it to your family, what's Arman's core purpose right now in life?
You know what? When I take a look at all the businesses I've ever been involved in, there's one common thread, which is they all involve helping people in some capacity. And not that, I'm not no Martha, I'm not a nun, right? But I think the one thing that I've found I take enjoyment from is helping others get to where they want to be, whether it's through my business, whatever process I'm going through, or helping them solve a problem. My ultimate goal is to be a venture capitalist. So, it's the same sort of theme. I think my knack seems to be in somehow helping people get to that next step. So
very good. Very good. Well, that's what's going to happen. You're going to sell this thing for a shit ton of money, and then you're going to be a VC guy. You start your own fund.
So.
Arman, thank you so much. Awesome story. Appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. I'm going to hit stop on the recording, but hang on just a second before you hang up the call. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Great story.
Thank you. Take care.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.